Have you ever wondered how lethal injection works? It's a method of execution that has been utilized extensively around the world. Originating as a more humane alternative to earlier, more brutal forms of capital punishment, lethal injection is designed to bring about the end of life swiftly and without pain. Yet, its use is shrouded in controversy and questions. In this video, we will break down the process of lethal injection in a clear, step-by-step manner. The process of lethal injection is a complex and meticulously planned procedure. It begins long before the prisoner is strapped to the gurney. The condemned individual is typically granted a last meal of their choosing, a tradition dating back centuries. This meal, laced with both humanity and finality, serves as a poignant reminder of the gravity of what is to come. Following this, the execution chamber is prepared. This sterile, clinical environment is a stark contrast to the grim task it facilitates. The execution team, often consisting of trained medical personnel, ready the equipment. This includes the lethal injection machine, a device designed to deliver a precise sequence of drugs. Now let's delve into the three-drug protocol typically used. First in line is an anesthetic, often a barbiturate such as sodium thiopental. This powerful drug is used to induce unconsciousness, ensuring the individual feels no pain throughout the procedure. The second drug is a paralytic, usually pancuronium bromide, which serves to immobilize the person completely, halting all voluntary muscle movement. The final drug in this lethal cocktail is potassium chloride, a medication that stops the heart. When administered in high doses, it disrupts the electrical signaling essential to heart function, ultimately causing cardiac arrest. Each drug in the sequence has a crucial role to play, and their administration must be carefully timed and monitored to ensure the process is both effective and humane. It's crucial to note that while this is the typical protocol, the specifics can vary, based on factors such as the state's protocol, the availability of drugs, and legal regulations. But this is more than just a clinical procedure, it's a process steeped in controversy, raising profound questions about the nature of justice and the value of human life. It's a process that, despite its meticulous planning, can and does go wrong. That's the general process. But what happens when things don't go as planned? Despite its seemingly straightforward procedure, lethal injection can and has failed. In the realm of capital punishment, the margin for error is razor thin. Yet there have been instances where lethal injections did not go as planned. When a lethal injection fails, it's typically due to issues like vein access, drug efficacy, or incorrect administration. Vein access can pose a significant challenge. In some cases, the inmate's veins might be hard to locate due to factors like drug abuse or obesity. This can lead to a situation where the lethal drugs are incorrectly administered or not administered at all. The result can be a drawn-out, painful ordeal for the condemned, as they endure multiple attempts to establish a viable vein. The efficacy of the drugs used in lethal injection is another critical factor. In the three-drug protocol, each component plays a specific role. One to anesthetize, one to paralyze, and one to stop the heart. If any of these drugs fail to work as expected, the result can be a horrific scene of agony and distress. There have been instances where prisoners have gasped, convulsed, and even remained conscious during the execution process because the drugs did not work as intended. Incorrect administration of the lethal injection can also lead to a failed execution. This can occur when the execution team lacks the proper training or experience, leading to mistakes that can cause the prisoner undue suffering. The consequences of a failed lethal injection are dire. For the prisoner, there's the physical agony and psychological torment of a botched execution. For the execution team, there's the trauma of witnessing and contributing to such a scene. And then, there are legal consequences. A botched execution can lead to lawsuits and calls for moratoriums on capital punishment. It can spark public outrage and contribute to the ongoing debate about the humanity and morality of the death penalty. The consequences of a failed lethal injection can be dire, both for the prisoner and the execution team. The gravity of these situations underscores the necessity for a thorough understanding of the process and the potential for things to go wrong. Lethal injection, like any method of execution, is not without its controversies. The debates surrounding this practice span a broad spectrum encompassing ethical, legal, and medical perspectives. Let's start with the ethical debates. The crux of this issue lies in a fundamental question. Is it morally acceptable to intentionally end a person's life as a form of punishment? This question has divided societies for centuries, and lethal injection is no exception. It's a debate that pits the rights of the convicted against the rights of the victims, and it's one that doesn't seem to be nearing a resolution anytime soon. Moving on to the legal debates, these often revolve around the Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. Critics argue that lethal injection can cause severe pain if not administered correctly, thus falling under this prohibition. The courts have been wrestling with this issue for years, with no clear consensus emerging. Now let's look at the medical side of the argument. One major concern is the source and quality of the drugs used in lethal injection. Due to the controversial nature of capital punishment, many pharmaceutical companies refuse to sell their products for use in executions. This has led to states sourcing drugs from less regulated, often overseas, manufacturers raising questions about their efficacy and safety. Another medical controversy lies in the qualifications of the people administering the injection. In many cases, these individuals lack the medical training necessary to ensure the procedure is carried out without causing unnecessary suffering. This raises serious ethical questions for the medical community, as the Hippocratic Oath taken by all doctors explicitly forbids actions that could harm a patient. These controversies have led some to question the continued use of lethal injection. As societies evolve, so too do our methods of punishment, and it remains to be seen how this debate will shape the future of capital punishment. With the controversies surrounding lethal injection, what are the alternatives? Let's delve into some of the other methods of execution that are still in use or have been proposed around the world. First, we have electrocution. Once the primary method of execution in the United States before the advent of lethal injection. The electric chair was thought to be a more humane alternative to hanging, which was the most common method at the time. However, botched electrocutions and concerns about cruel and unusual punishment have led many states to abandon this method. Next, we have the gas chamber. This method was first used in the United States in the early 20th century and involves sealing the condemned person in an airtight chamber and then introducing a lethal gas. However, this method has been largely abandoned due to concerns about the condemned person's suffering and the potential for harm to those carrying out the execution. Hanging is another method that has a long history. It is still used in some countries, but has largely been replaced in the United States due to concerns about botched hangings and the potential for decapitation. Lastly, the firing squad. This method is rarely used today, but it is still technically legal in a few states. Proponents argue that it is quick and relatively painless if carried out correctly. However, critics argue that it is barbaric and has no place in a civilized society. Each method has its pros and cons. Some argue that certain methods are quicker or less painful than lethal injection, while others contend that they are more prone to error or cause unnecessary suffering. It's important to note that, while these alternatives to lethal injection exist, none are without their own controversies and challenges. The question of how to carry out executions, or whether they should be carried out at all, is a complex and contentious issue, with no easy answers. While these alternatives exist, none are without their own controversies and challenges. So, that's a deep dive into the process of lethal injection. We've traversed the chilling path of this method of capital punishment, from the seemingly straightforward yet hauntingly complex process of lethal injection to the terrifying consequences when it fails. We've seen how the three-drug protocol, once thought to be a humane method of execution, can result in excruciating suffering if not administered correctly. We've also delved into the controversies that have engulfed lethal injection over the years. Questions of its constitutionality, the ethics of using medical procedures for execution, and the troubling secrecy surrounding the procurement of drugs have all been raised, stirring up a storm of debate and litigation. We've looked at alternatives as well. From the electric chair to the gas chamber, firing squad to hanging, each comes with its own set of ethical and practical concerns. Yet they remind us that the search for a humane method of execution is a paradox in itself. It's a complex and contentious topic, and it's clear there are no easy answers. The issue of capital punishment strikes at the heart of our values about justice, humanity, and the sanctity of life. While the debate continues, one thing is clear: the question of how to carry out capital punishment is far from settled.